I've wanted to do videos covering my game of the year for a few years now, but for one reason or another, I've just never gotten them done. I waited too long or couldn't get any good ideas to make it interesting beyond just stating my opinion, and each year it passed me by. With everyone doing their top 10 games of the decade videos and articles and whatnot, I thought it might be a decent way to make up for the years of not doing any Game of the Year videos. But then I had an idea. What if I made a Game of the Year video for every year of the past decade all in one big celebratory video? Today I'm going to recount my favorite video games of every year from 2010 to 2019. Do note that while I grew up with the PS2 and a bit of PS3, I've spent most of the past decade playing Nintendo and indie games, so if your favorite game isn't on my list, do understand that I didn't play every single game that released this decade. In fact, I still don't even have a PS4 or Xbox One. Anyway, as far as the list goes, I'll talk a bit about my favorite game from each year and what they mean to me, as well as one honorable mention for each year. With all that out of the way, let's start with my 2010 Game of the Year. VVVVVV, or for brevity's sake V, is one of the first indie games I ever played. While I didn't play it way back in 2010, it definitely still is my favorite game that was released that year. It's one of the few retro throwback games that opted to take after one of the more obscure gaming platforms of the 80s, being inspired by the visual style of the Commodore 64 rather than the NES or SNES, and that helps to set it apart from the slew of other retro indie games. Bright colors and beautifully atmospheric chiptune soundtrack make for one of the most distinct games of its style, and I've always loved that about it, especially the soundtrack. On the surface, it's a fairly simple retro 2D platformer, with the gimmick of flipping gravity upside down to traverse the screen rather than just jumping over obstacles. But connecting the main levels together is a big overworld that also hides a bunch of secrets and collectibles. It's very satisfying to explore and fill out the map, and the heavy atmosphere serves to exemplify that satisfying feeling. By far my favorite aspect of V, however, is the variety among the main levels. Each of the 6 levels have a central gimmick that gets expanded upon throughout, and they're all used to great effect, such as these bouncy lines that flip you on contact or the vertical auto-scroller in the tower that pushes your ability with the core flipping mechanic to the extreme. It's an incredibly fun and unique game, and one of my favorite indie games of all time. In fact, I believe it was the first game I ever bought twice, originally on 3DS and then again later on Steam during a sale, and then again when it came out on Switch. I really like this game, okay? 2010's runner-up goes to Super Mario Galaxy 2, maybe Donkey Kong Country Returns, I don't know. While I had been playing Minecraft since 2009, it technically counts on this list for the fact that its official 1.0 release didn't occur until November 18th, 2011. Technicalities aside, Minecraft is one of the most important games in my history as someone who loves this medium so passionately. It got me to create and express myself in ways that no other game ever has, save for Mario Paint Composer. What really makes Minecraft special to me is its range of valid playstyles. Minecraft has limitless possibilities, yes, but it's also very simple and accessible on the surface, so it's easy for people of any age or skill level to understand and get into. It's a game that lets you do anything, but still has its own set of goals to ease people into its systems. This elegant design has kept me coming back to the game for over a decade, and to this day I still love Minecraft and play it regularly. The way they've been constantly supporting and updating the game, even in its duller years throughout the mid-2010s, is admirable to say the least. And they've been really knocking that out of the park lately with the absolutely massive 1.13 and 1.14 updates. And the recently released 1.15 update is pretty great too, giving the game a major overhaul with literally over 700 bug fixes and a new rendering engine, alongside the bees and stuff. The point I really want to make, however, is just how special Minecraft is to me. When I said it's one of the most important games in my life, I wasn't kidding. I started getting serious with content creation because of Minecraft. You can still see remnants of this on my channel today, even if most of the Minecraft-related videos are gone. Without Minecraft, I wouldn't be where I am today, making this video, talking to all of you, and for that reason, Minecraft will forever have my utmost love and respect. 2011's runner-up goes to Portal 2. Before I say anything about this game, I need to point out that I won't be showing any footage of the game on screen for this segment. Instead, enjoy some of its nice background artwork. Spoiling any of this game could diminish a new player's experience, and I don't want to risk that in case any of you out there do end up trying some of these games based on my recommendations. The reason I don't want to show anything at all is because my 2012 Game of the Year is actually a visual novel called Katawa Shoujo. I'm sure anyone who's known me for a while saw this one coming from a mile away, as my love of this game has been somewhat of an open secret. While Minecraft was a very important game for me in my teenage years and enabled me to appreciate the creative aspect of video games, Katawa Shoujo was a very important game for me in my early adult years and gave me a newfound appreciation for storytelling in video games. Without this game, I would likely never give games such as Mother 3 or the Metal Gear Solid series a try, due to their reliance on strong storytelling and characters for creating engaging and memorable experiences. I grew up playing platformers, and a lot of them on Nintendo systems, where an engaging story and interesting characters were kind of hard to come by. So this was really the first time I had ever experienced a video game with any sort of depth in its writing, and it has that depth in spades. Even after playing other highly acclaimed story-driven games like the ones I mentioned before, revisiting Katawa Shoujo, it still holds up high against them to me. The characters are all very complex with different backgrounds, motivations, morals, even the tiny things that make them really feel like humans and not just characters in a story. Normally I would give examples, but again, I really don't want to spoil any specifics. I suppose I can at least tell you the premise, but that raises its own set of issues. See, Katawa Shoujo is not just a visual novel, it's an eroge dating sim, meaning it has adult content in it. And it features a cast of characters that are physically disabled. And it was made entirely by a team of 4chan members. So yeah, the premise is not flattering in the least. In concept, it sounds like an awful fetish porn game. However, after around 6 years in development, what they released was a very serious, down-to-earth story about an 18-year-old boy named Hisao, who suffers from a heart attack due to a medical condition he was previously unaware of. He transfers to a school specializing in helping the physically disabled get their education and must come to terms with his new lifestyle while meeting some friends and figuring out what to do with his life. So as far as the concept of the cast all being disabled goes, I say it's handled very tactfully and respectfully, even pushing a moral of disabled people not letting their disabilities define them. It's not the focus of the narrative, but when it does touch on the subject, it is very respectful of it. And as far as the adult content that I mentioned earlier goes, it even handles that with the same tact and respect that it handles the topic of disability. The story is much more focused on the romantic aspect of the relationships, but let's be real here. Sex is a very real part of a healthy relationship, unless you're asexual. And as such, Katawa Shoujo doesn't just ignore it, nor does it go out of its way to focus too much on sexual content. Even during some of those scenes, it uses the opportunity to flesh out the characters more in ways that other games too scared to talk about something as taboo as sex just wouldn't be able to do. I know the segment is going to go on for like twice as long as all the others, but that's just because every time I talk about this game, I have to spend half the time justifying its existence. It's a shame people will ignore this game outright on its concept alone. As someone who has played through the entire game 100%, I can guarantee you it's not just a porn game. It is truly something special that anyone with an appreciation for a deep narrative and strong characters will love. Man, I rambled on so long, I almost forgot to mention the soundtrack. It adds a ton to the atmosphere and is honestly my favorite soundtrack of any video game I've ever played. If you're comfortable with the adult themes, I highly recommend giving this game a try. 2012's runner-up goes to Spec Ops: The Line. As a mostly Nintendo gamer, 2013 was a pretty slow year for me, with a lot of the games I played being pretty mediocre, like Sonic Lost World or Plants vs. Zombies 2. So picking my favorite from the list of 2013's games was pretty easy. Making this pick even easier is the fact that Rayman Legends is one of the best 2D platformers ever made. As a disclaimer, I didn't play it until the definitive edition came out on Switch, but even just judging it on the main campaign as seen in the original release, this game is utterly fantastic. Rayman Legends has my vote for the best controls in any 2D platformer ever. It flows so well. The sense of speed and fluidity as you dash through levels and over obstacles is so immensely satisfying. It's hard to put into words. The game is just a joy to play. It's very rare that a game makes as strong as an impact on me as this game did on its fun factor alone. But Rayman Legends is fun. Really fun. I couldn't put it down for weeks. Alongside the buttery smooth controls are some fantastically designed levels, some unique gimmick levels that are actually fun, save for this one where Rayman turns into a duck, and an absolutely gorgeous hand-drawn art style that really helps the creative level theme stand out even more. If you're a fan of platformers at all, I implore you to pick this game up. It's an absolute must-play in my eyes. What else can I really say? Rayman Legends is legendary. Alright, I know that was corny. 2013's runner-up goes to The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Remember how I said Rayman Legends is one of the best 2D platformers ever made? Well, Shovel Knight is even better. 1 year after its massively successful Kickstarter in 2013, Yacht Club Games officially released Shovel Knight, and thanks to some YouTubers I followed at the time giving it some exposure before release with some early demos, I picked it up on day one. I instantly fell in love with the game. Its presentation is on point, with beautiful NES-inspired graphics that retain that 8-bit aesthetic while not limiting itself when it comes to things like widescreen aspect ratio or parallax scrolling. Likewise, the chiptune soundtrack by Jake Kaufman is absolutely incredible and is among my all-time favorites. The control scheme is pretty simple, but the game wrings a lot of depth out of the handful of moves that Shovel Knight has. However, you can find a new relic in each stage that gives Shovel Knight a unique ability, but it's restricted by a mana meter. Alongside the relics, there's a ton of other collectibles such as music sheets that unlock pieces in a sound test or max health upgrades that can be purchased or found in between stages, as well as some other purchasable items like passive upgrades and a number of different colored armors that give you different abilities. Of course, these are all purchased with gold, which is littered everywhere throughout every stage. It also uses a Dark Souls-like death system where instead of having a limited amount of lives, dying in a stage drops some gold. You can pick it back up, but if you die again before grabbing it, it's gone for good. The sense of progression you get from slowly getting more and more upgrades for Shovel Knight is really satisfying and makes for a game that's a real blast to play through, especially with its wonderful level design. Each level has a unique theme and new and interesting obstacles, so the game never feels repetitive or boring, even throughout its 4 different campaigns. As per the Kickstarter stretch goals that were reached, Shovel Knight has expanded to feature 3 extra campaigns starring different bosses from the main game, those being Plague Knight, Spectre Knight, and King Knight. I won't go in depth on all of them here, but I will give a short rundown for each. Plague is basically the same as Shovel, but with an entirely different moveset. Plague Knight excels in aerial movement, so some of the level design is adjusted to tune the difficulty a little better to Plague's abilities, including brand new sections to challenge your skills with him. It does feel kind of samey compared to Shovel's campaign, but it's still a fun time, especially with all the extra collectibles. Spectre, on the other hand, is a complete overhaul. Each stage shares a theme with its Shovel of Hope counterpart, but the level design is completely different, alongside Spectre Knight's own unique moveset. The story is also way more interesting than Shovel's campaign, and so is Plague's, so it's all around a really solid campaign, in many aspects even better than the original. King Knight's campaign was only just released as of the time of writing, so I haven't been able to dig my teeth into it quite yet, but it seems to be following in Spectre's footsteps with a unique moveset and brand new level design to suit it. It also includes a completely original card game called Joustus, which is alright. As a standalone indie throwback platformer back in 2014, Shovel Knight blew me away, but as a full package in 2019, the game has only gotten bigger and better than ever. It is more than worth the price of admission for everything here, so if you haven't picked this up yet, now is the time to do it. 2014's runner-up goes to Smash 4, because there was really nothing else to pick from that year. Oh boy, here we go. 2015 was a really slow year. The first 3 quarters of it went by with almost nothing. I pretty much just played Smash 4 until Mario Maker came out. But one game changed that. Upon its release, Undertale became one of the most critically acclaimed indie hits of the decade, even more so than Shovel Knight was. It even went on to win a Best Game of All Time poll by popular vote on GameFAQs, just barely beating out Ocarina of Time, and only a few months after its release, no less. To say Undertale was big is a massive understatement. When I saw a few people talking about how good it was on Twitter, I decided to try it out, and like many others, fell in love with it instantly. Undertale made such an impact on me the first time I played it. I loved the characters, the writing, the jokes, the battle system, the world, the lore, and as I'm sure any of you who are following my channel back when the game was new, I really loved the music. I've replayed it multiple times since its initial release, and while no repeat playthrough ever had the same impact as my first playthrough, I still thoroughly enjoyed it each time. I'm really not the type of person to play an RPG more than once, or even at all in most cases, so the fact that an RPG managed to grab and hold my attention so strongly is very impressive. I don't think I really need to explain what Undertale is, I'm sure all of you know by now, but I do want to stress just how important the game is to me. It's one of the few games that really made a die-hard fan out of me. I definitely got a bit too into the hype surrounding the game after its initial explosion onto internet culture, but I do still have very fond memories of playing and discussing Undertale with my friends. I got so attached to the world and its characters that I've always wanted to return there just one more time. But I knew a sequel was extremely unlikely. Then, a demo for a follow-up called Deltarune shadow dropped in 2018 out of nowhere, and I fell in love once again. I can't wait to see where the series goes in the future, and it'll always have a very special place in my heart. 2015's runner-up goes to Super Mario Maker. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been a huge fan of Kirby. I grew up with Superstar Ultra on the DS, and to this day, it's still one of my favorite games of all time. For years, no other Kirby game has rivaled Superstar Ultra for my top spot, but finally, Finally, in 2016, Kirby Planet Robobot stood up to the plate and delivered a masterpiece for the series. Robobot is an absolutely incredible game and my favorite game on the 3DS, bar none. While I have trouble picking a favorite between this and Superstar Ultra, I cannot deny the greatness that Robobot achieves. On the surface, it may seem like a fairly standard Kirby game, following the formula set by Return to Dreamland and Triple Deluxe, but Robobot stands out with its incredible polish and refinement, and its fun and unique central gimmick. While Return to Dreamland and Triple Deluxe had central gimmicks that were flashy, they were also pretty slow, so when the novelty ran out, they became less and less interesting to play. The Robobot armor, on the other hand, is tons of fun. It's got tons of variety with different compatible abilities, it's got plenty of unique uses for puzzles and platforming, and best of all, it's fast. The Robobot armor is an absolutely incredible addition to the modern Kirby formula because of how well it complements the core gameplay. Puzzles are cranked up to their best in the series, set pieces are flashier and crazier than ever, and even the story is pretty interesting for a Kirby game. And that fan service, oh god, being a Kirby fan makes Planet Robobot 10 times better. I honestly wish they would have made a follow-up to Planet Robobot on Switch instead of Star Allies. As it stands, Kirby Planet Robobot is easily the best game of 2016, and one of the best games in the entire series. 2016's runner-up is Pac-Man Championship Edition 2. Oh man, where do I even begin? I guess I'll start with this. Super Mario Odyssey is my favorite video game of all time. I can't even begin to describe my love for this game, but I guess I'll try my best. The reason I love Super Mario Odyssey really boils down to one thing. It's fun. It's maybe the most fun game I've ever played. It has incredible movement with all these different moves at your disposal. Finding the most satisfying or interesting way to overcome the game's obstacles is always a joy for me. What makes the fun core gameplay even better is the absolute well of content this game has. I know that for some this is a point of contention, but let me explain. Mario Odyssey is definitely filled with a quite large amount of content many would define as filler, and I can't really disagree with that definition. There are lots of moons just out in the open, or being given to you for performing very simple tasks like kicking a rock around. Then you realize you can pick up the rock with the moon in it and bash it into another rock, and bam, you instantly get the moon. Or you figure out the most efficient way to get the moons out in the open while not straying too far from the main path of the level, and bam, now you're routing speedruns to the game. Those satisfying controls carry the game immensely. It really does fit the definition of a sandbox very well, giving you fairly simple challenges and tasking you to make the most fun out of it by giving you a diverse set of moves. There's a reason this is the game with the second highest amount of speedruns on speedrun.com, right behind Super Mario 64. The replayability and satisfying controls really do wonders for this game, and that's the reason I got 999 moons and still kept coming back. Super Mario Odyssey is fun. It's really fun, and it's fun in ways that no other game ever really has been for me. I could play this game 100 times and still love every second of it. And that is why Super Mario Odyssey is my favorite game of all time, and obviously my favorite game of 2017. 2017 actually had a lot of really fantastic games, but for personal reasons, my runner-up is going to Yono and the Celestial Elephants. Following 2017 giving me my new favorite game of all time, 2018 gave me my new second favorite game of all time, with Celeste. Similarly to Mario Odyssey, Celeste is just a really fun game. It takes the concept of the tough-as-nails retro platformer, as seen in previous entries like V and Shovel Knight, to the extreme. Celeste's intense difficulty is complemented very well by its generous checkpoint system and the removal of lives, which had become standard by 2018, especially among indies. Regardless, Celeste is less of a level-based platformer and more of a collection of miniature challenges that are all tied together by a certain theme, with obstacles that get more complex as each level goes on. The difficulty curve is perfect too. It introduces ideas in a safe environment, ramps them up, and then combines them with other obstacles that were also introduced earlier. It never gets boring or repetitive, as it's always giving you new challenges and gimmicks. Now, if it were just a really well-designed and fun platformer, I would still love it, but Game of the Year? That's only for the real good stuff. And keep in mind, Celeste had to compete with Smash Ultimate that year. Fortunately though, Celeste is much more than just a great game. It's a memorable experience with well-written and likable characters and a deep, touching narrative about struggling with anxiety and overcoming your own personal challenges, alongside whatever the world throws at you, literally in this case. The story is made even more powerful and memorable thanks to the incredible soundtrack by Lena Raine. It's a soundtrack that knows exactly how the players feel at any given moment and how to exemplify that through music. The orchestral and chiptune instruments blend together so seamlessly to display raw emotion in a way that almost no other soundtrack ever has for me. Not to get too caught up with the soundtrack, but goddamn if it isn't one of the best soundtracks ever composed for a video game. Literally every aspect of Celeste is fine-tuned to perfection, from its controls to its level design, from its visuals to its music, from its characters to its narrative. I would have to really nitpick to come up with anything that I don't absolutely love about Celeste. If you haven't played it, please do yourself a favor and try it out. 2018's runner-up goes to Smash Ultimate. Finally, we stop at present day. 2019, the final year of the decade, and a pretty meh way to cap it off, especially right after the absolute banger years 2017 and 2018 were. But even among these not as incredible releases compared to the last 2 years, there are still some gems. For me, I have to give my game of the year to Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. This game was a big surprise to me. Even as someone that wasn't all that interested in the original Yooka-Laylee, I still found myself reasonably excited for Impossible Lair, and when reviews were out and pretty positive, validating my hopes that it wasn't going to be another lukewarm disappointment, I was even more anxious to get my hands on it. I picked it up day one and was pleasantly surprised by the pretty visuals compared to the kind of plasticky look that the original Yooka-Laylee had, and 60 FPS running on the Switch. Then I got into the first level, got comfortable with the controls almost immediately, and blasted through it, picking up everything on the way, and I was floored. That was so much fun! And that was just the first level. A couple more levels later, and I really get to sink my teeth into the overworld. There's secrets, collectibles, puzzles, the works. The overworld is densely packed with fun stuff to do, and that's just the stuff in between the main platforming levels. Once again, we have a really solid 2D platformer with excellent controls and fun, challenging level design, all held together by a really unique idea that helps it to stand out, with the overworld. Sounds pretty good, but Game of the Year? Well, there's more to it than just a really good game, at least for me. I had the pleasure of helping to glitch hunt and route actual speedruns for the game alongside others in the community, meeting new friends and pushing the game to its limits. This overworld is broken. I mean, just look at this. Or this, or this, or this. Figuring this stuff out and putting it to good use in speedruns was a fun and satisfying experience like nothing else. Most people will take off points from a game if they get soft-locked or lose their progress due to a glitch, but not a lot of people will actually give a game credit for its glitch factor. Glitches can be fun and create a unique experience for any game. Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is just one of those games where the glitch factor greatly enhances the experience, at least for me. And when that experience is put on top of an already fantastic game, what you have is a recipe for my 2019 Game of the Year. 2019's runner-up goes to New Super Lucky's Tale. Well, there you have it, my favorite game for every year of the past decade. Can you tell that I like platformers? This decade was where my passion for video games really shined through. I started making VGM covers in Mario Paint Composer, made serious analytical reviews, and gained a small following of people that actually care about what I have to say. So if you're one of those people, thank you. You all have made this past decade even more special for me, and I can't wait to see where things go in the 2020s. If you'd like to do any more to support me, I have a Patreon page. Thank you to all my current patrons here on the screen, and thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in 2029.